Good evening, shareholders of Olam International Limited. Thank you for joining us today at the SIAS Olam Virtual Information Session. As you already know, Olam will be holding the EGM on the 18th of February, and the agenda is to seek approval from shareholders on the proposed restructuring of the company by way of a scheme of arrangement. The proposed listing of OFI Group Limited and the proposed demerger of the Olam Food Ingredients business. You shareholders will be eager to know how this reorganization of Olam will impact your investment. What is the strategic rationale to carve out OFI? Would it make more sense for them to continue as a single entity as it is? And will this transaction cause a dilution to shareholders' value? To help you make informed decision on how you should vote at the EGM, tonight we are very pleased to have the senior management of Olam joining us at this dialogue. I have with me on my left Mr. Sunny George Verghese, who is very famous, who you all know very well. He's the founder, executive director, co-founder, and group CEO. Good evening, Sunny.
Thank you, David.
We have Mr. Neelamani Muthukumar, Group Chief Financial Officer. Good evening, Muthu.
Good evening.
And all the way from London, we have Mr. Shekhar Anandaraman. Hi, Shekhar. Can you hear us? Hi. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Olam Food Ingredients, who is joining us today virtually. Now, they will share more insights on this transaction as well as to provide you with more relevant information. The management will also address your questions, so please submit your questions via the chat box provided to you on the screen. Without further ado, I will now invite Mr. Sunny Verghese to take us through the presentation to explain the transaction. Over to you, Sunny.
Thank you, David. Dear fellow Olam shareholders, good evening. At the very outset, let me acknowledge and thank David Gerald, the founder, president, and CEO of the Securities Investors Association of Singapore, for making himself available today to moderate this session. We are deeply grateful on behalf of my board and my own behalf. I want to thank you for doing this. And I want to welcome all of you, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you to today's virtual information session on the proposed restructuring, proposed listing, and proposed demerger of Olam Food Ingredients Group Limited. As a result of the precautionary measures because of COVID-19, we regret that we are not able to do this in person, face-to-face with all of you, but we will try and endeavor to provide you a good update on the progress of this restructuring effort, as well as answer and clarify the questions that you might have. We have organized today's presentation into 5 parts, and I have promised my team that I will try and run through this at a fair clip so that we can complete this presentation in about 15 minutes so that we can spend most of the time answering your questions and providing you the clarifications that you're seeking. The first part of the presentation would be to provide you a recap of the reorganization plan for Olam and the restructuring plan for Olam. The second part, we will describe the transaction itself in terms of the 5 resolutions that we are seeking your approval for. The third part of this presentation will be to quickly provide you the strategic rationale for why we are attempting to do this. And in the fourth part, we will offer you the indicative timetable and what you should keep in mind in terms of the actions that you need to take. And finally, we will summarize with a summary slide on the key takeaways. So to set the context and background, I want to revisit and recap what the reorganization and restructuring of Olam entails. So as all of you are aware, in January 2020, we announced the intention to undertake a transformative reorganization and restructuring plan for Olam by splitting the company into 3 new operating groups. The first one is Olam Food Ingredients Limited, which is OFI. Second is Olam Global Agri, which is OGA, and then Olam International Limited, OIL. And we envisaged that we will complete these restructuring through a series of carve-outs, a subsequent potential IPO, and a concurrent demerger of these entities on a sequential basis. The key objective of this restructuring exercise is to explore strategic options that would eliminate the current value of the Olam businesses and also develop new pathways to create further long-term value on a sustained basis. And we hope to get this done by simplifying and focusing our current diverse portfolio that has developed over the years. We are 33 years in business today, and we had grown this business and got diversified into multiple platforms, all focused on the agri-business space. But we believe by simplifying and focusing this portfolio now into these 3 coherent operating entities that are all connected together through an underlying logic that links them up, which are similar in nature, and actually exploiting very different set of trends. We believe that each of these operating entities has then the capacity to develop the full potential for these businesses. As a result of this, each entity has now developed a compelling new vision for these entities, a very distinct equity story, and also a new game plan for profitable growth and value creation on a sustained basis. So that is the context and background. So if you look at the 3 entities, each of them has a very specific role and position in the Olam group. So I start with OIL. So OIL's role is to provide active stewardship to both OFI, OGA, and the other parts of OIL till OFI is carved out, IPO'd and demerged, and the same thing with OGA down the road. Secondly, its role is to responsibly divest the non-core businesses and assets that we had identified in our strategic plan 2019 to 24. The third role it has is to nurture and develop the gestating assets and then partially and fully monetize this over time. The fourth role is to incubate our new platforms for growth based on digital and sustainability engines, which we call Engine 2. And finally, it is to build and develop our shared services business. In the case of OFI, we are positioning it as an attractive play for the growing demand for natural, sustainable, on-trend food ingredients and raw materials that are sustainably sourced and traceable, so as to allow our consumers to enjoy the healthy food products that they love. It is comprising of 5 businesses, which includes our cocoa business, our coffee business, our nuts business, our dairy business, and our spices business. And it is organized into 2 segments, a global sourcing segment and an ingredients and solutions value-added segment. As far as the last entity is concerned, Olam Global Agri, it is a market-leading and differentiated food, feed, and fiber agri-business focused on high-growth emerging markets, and by the nature of our participation offers us superior returns. This caters to a different set of trends in terms of the growing demand for food and feed and fiber in emerging markets, the food security issues that surround it, and the shift in dietary habits from carbohydrate cereal-based diet to protein and fat-based diets. And this business comprises of our grains platform, our integrated feed and proteins platform, our edible oils business, our rice specialty grains and seeds business, our fiber business, rubber business, wood business, and a commodity financial services business. We have organized this into 2 platforms and 3 main segments: the food and feed platform, the fiber ag industrials, and ag services platform, and within that, 3 segments. We envisage that we will execute the reorganization and restructuring of Olam in 4 steps. The first step was resegmenting the business into these 3 new operating entities, and within the 3 new operating entities into these new segments. And we also identified new key metrics that our investors are interested in the way we communicate the progress of these 3 entities. We have therefore reported our financial year 2020 results based on this revised segmentation and these revised metrics, and also the first half 21 results was presented along these lines with comparable historical financials for the last 3 years based on this new segmentation. So this step has been successfully completed. The second step was reorganizing the businesses, firstly in terms of developing a new target operating model for each of these businesses, in terms of how we have embedded the business structures, as well as the functional structures and the regional and country management structures into these new entities. It is also about manning and providing the leadership and organization that is required to run these 3 entities independently. And all of this has also been successfully completed in terms of the reorganization, which is our step 2 of this process. The step 3 of the process was more complex because it involved the carve out and separation of all these entities in Olam into these 3 new operating groups, where we have 250 odd entities in over 60 countries, taking them all and separating them and carving them out into these 3 new operating groups. That has also been substantially completed by the end of December. We are now at step 4 of this reorganization plan, which is the subject of today's discussion, where we are planning for the OFI IPO and concurrent demerger and spin-off of OFI from the Olam Group, and evaluating specific strategic options for Olam Global Agri-Business, including potentially bringing in minority investors, strategic minority investors as one of the strategic options that we are pursuing for the OGA business. Most of the rest of the presentation will be focusing on the scheme that involves the new structure and the OFI IPO and the concurrent demerger of OFI. So let me just very briefly summarize what we are asking the shareholders to approve in this proposed transaction. The proposed transaction actually includes 5 transactions overall. The first transaction is the proposed restructuring by way of the scheme, which will interpose 2 recently incorporated companies, Olam Group, which is incorporated in Singapore, and OFI GL, Olam Food Ingredients Group Limited, which is incorporated in the UK, between the company and its shareholders. So we are interposing these 2 new vehicles between the company and its shareholders. That is the proposed restructuring by way of scheme. So in the scheme, we want first that to be approved. The second is the proposed dividend in specie. This is not a cash dividend payout to shareholders, but this is a first essential step in the reorganization process. The third transaction that we are seeking approval for is the proposed disposal by which the Olam Group will dispose of all or some of its OFI GL shares in the OFI IPO via a vendor sale or a secondary sale of these shares. The fourth transaction that we are seeking approval for is the proposed dilution by which OG's stake in the principal subsidiary OFI Group Limited will be reduced through the issuance of primary shares or new shares in the proposed IPO of OFI GL. And finally, the proposed demerger via the proposed capital reduction of Olam Group, by which Olam Group will carry out the proposed distribution to distribute all of its remaining OFI GL shares to the distribution entitled shareholders. So these are the 5 proposals that will constitute the whole transaction, the proposed transaction, for which we are seeking approval. The resolution is in both all of these resolutions are interconditional on each other, and therefore the directors of Olam OIL, which will become Olam Group, are recommending to the shareholders to vote in favor of each of these transactions. And I will explain the rationale why we are seeking your support in voting in favor of all of these 5 resolutions. So this would be the structure of the Olam Group after the separation as we speak in January of 2022, where we have got the rest of the Olam Group under Olam Holdings Limited, which will be part of Olam International, and then through 3 different subsidiaries, the Olam Global Agribusiness, as well as the rest of the Olam Group businesses, including the Olam Technology and Business Service Solution business, the OGH business, which is housing the gestating and the deprioritized assets, as well as the Engine 2 Olam Ventures business, will be all held through that structure. And OFI GL will be separated. So if you see after completion, if you approve the scheme, the structure is provided there. And then once you have approved the proposed dividend in specie, the proposed disposal, the proposed dilution, and the proposed demerger, OFI GL will be completely separated out, and we will have the rest of the Olam Group structure as part of the structure. So at the time of the scheme approval, we will also have a scenario where Olam Group will replace Olam International Limited, and all of us who are shareholders of Olam International Limited will receive 1 share of the Olam Group, and everything else remains the same. You will now become a shareholder of Olam Group, which will be the listed entity. OIL will become delisted, and OIL will become part of the OFI GL Group. So that is what is envisaged from this transaction. I want to move very quickly to the strategic rationale. So we believe that by doing this, we will allow each of the new operating groups to simplify and focus its portfolio and sharpen its focus on this respective businesses. We believe that focus will allow us to extract more synergies and create more long-term sustained value. Secondly, it will allow each of these operating entities to take those businesses to full potential, focusing on the key trends that impact that particular business, as well as being able to develop a new game plan and growth opportunities, hire the right kind of talent, build the right kind of capabilities to create long-term value in these businesses. We will also be able to significantly raise capital that will allow us to both right-size the balance sheet of these entities, but more importantly, provide growth capital to support and fund long-term value creation for our existing shareholders. And it will also improve our overall financial position of the Olam Group as a result of the primary and secondary sale envisaged from OFI, as well as the capital raise envisaged in OGA to right-size the balance sheet for the remaining Olam Group of companies as well. So as far as OFI is concerned, the rationale for doing this IPO, proposed listing, and demerger is to allow shareholders to participate in the significant growth opportunities of OFI directly. Secondly, to provide the financial flexibility and the growth capital that OFI requires to capture future growth opportunities and to pivot the business into a more value-added ingredient business and attract the right kind of shareholders that will value this business and potentially re-rate this business as they are very interested in the set of trends and the themes that the OFI business represents. And finally, it will strengthen the OFI business's balance sheet and enhance its credit profile and provide it the right optimal capital structure as well. So what you will get as a shareholder is firstly, when the scheme is approved and the scheme becomes effective, for every OIL share that you have, you will get one OG share. And after the scheme and proposed demerger becomes effective, for every OIL share that you have, you will get one OG share, plus you will get OFIGL shares as well. And there will be no additional payment or consideration that you need to make for both receiving 1 and receiving 2, no stamp duties to be paid. So you will participate in the full upside value creation potential of OFIGL, as well as of the remaining Olam group, as well as you will have a shareholding in both these entities. In terms of timetable, the important dates that you need to keep in mind is that the the latest date and time for lodgement of the scheme meeting proxy form will be Tuesday, the 15th of February 22 at 3 p.m. And the same timeline is there for the latest date and time for lodgement of the EGM proxy form. And the latest date to pre-register online to attend the scheme meeting and the EGM, as David mentioned, on the 18th of February will be Tuesday, the 15th February at 3:30 p.m. The date and time of the scheme meeting is Friday, the 18th February at 3 p.m. And the date and time of the EGM is on the same day, same place, but will start at 3:30 p.m. And finally, I just want to leave you with the key takeaways, which is basically, first and foremost, that in line with the reorganization exercise and the restructuring plan, the company has substantially completed the carve-out and separation of the 3 new operating groups, OFI, OGA, and OIL. The company is now seeking shareholder approvals to implement the reorganization and restructuring plan by way of approving the scheme of arrangement and proposed dividend in specie, as I've explained, to achieve a group structure that will enable the proposed IPO and demerger of OFI Group Limited from the group. The second is the proposed disposal, dilution, and demerger, the combined 3 transactions, the proposed vendor sale, the issue of new shares by OFI at its IPO, and the proposed demerger of OFI by capital reduction via the distribution of OFI shares by OG, is the first key takeaway. The second key takeaway is, if you approve all these resolutions, OG will then replace OIL as the listed company in Singapore. The IPO of OFI will take place, and OFIGL is planned for a primary listing on the London main board with a concurrent secondary listing in the Singapore Stock Exchange, SGXST. The public offering of shares in OFI OGL via vendor sale and the new issue will be done. And finally, the proposed transaction will help in significantly simplifying and streamlining the company's portfolio, and it will provide us an opportunity to enhance long-term shareholder value and will mark a critical milestone in our journey to deliver to our shareholders the reorganization and restructuring plan that we announced 2 years ago in January 2020. With this, I'll hand back to the chairman of the meeting today, Mr. David Gerald, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny. That's quite a lot for a minority shareholder, that if I'm one, to assimilate, to understand. But okay, let's start very simply.
Yes.
As a shareholder, I don't lose anything, but I gain everything.
Yes.
All right. This is what you're trying to say. Shareholder value will be enhanced, financial position will be strengthened, and you're on a good wicket.
You're absolutely right.
Right?
You're absolutely right.
So, why is it the right time to do this? If so, why?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you stay as you are? You and your CFO and Shekhar will confirm that you're doing well. You're giving dividends. Company is not doing badly, even in COVID. So, is this a must-do?
Yeah. So, David, our objective is to maximize long-term value creation for our shareholders. So, you're absolutely right. If you see our first half results for 21, yes. We've had 33% growth in top line. We've had 27% growth in reported PATMI,
Yes.
and 116% growth in operational PATMI.
That's
So
right.
the company is doing well despite COVID and all the other
Yes.
headwinds that we have faced.
Yes.
But we believe that there's significant value to unlock by this reorganization and this restructuring. And we would like our shareholders to participate in that potential value that we believe we will be able to unlock
Yeah.
as a result of repositioning this business and pivoting the OFI business to become a more value-added ingredients and solutions business from a commodity business, from a basic commodity business, which we think will re-rate that business and that re-rate the business and create shareholder value. And the same thing for Olam Agri, which is really exploiting a very different set of trends
Yes.
and has got a different return and financial profile. We believe it can be a potential leader globally in that space. And with food security issues at the fore and the changing dietary habits at the fore and the growing demands of a larger population, we believe by focusing that business on that portfolio of products and those trends, we will be able to unlock value in the Olam Agri business. We also feel the rest of the Olam Group businesses, including our Engine 2 business and our OTBS business and our gestating business, there is value to be unlocked.
Right.
And by doing this reorganization, we can really bring about the focus through that simplification of the portfolio and then take advantage of these trends and also raise capital to support that growth and at the same time de-leverage the business substantially
Yes.
through this set of measures that we are taking. So you're absolutely right. The shareholder will not pay an additional cost or additional stamp duty.
Yes.
We are not selling off our crown jewel in the sense that our existing shareholders will own that crown jewel,
Yes.
which is going to be de-merged and spun off. But the existing shareholders will participate in the full upside of that business. And he is not only going to be a remaining shareholder only of the remaining group. He is going to fully participate in the OFI's growth prospects. He will also participate in the remaining Olam Group's value and growth prospects.
A lot of planning has gone into this and you have been working hard on this. Tell me, given that both OFI and OGA are dealing with soft commodities, wouldn't it make more sense for them to continue as a single entity, possibly with a leaner structure and or with more synergies, bargaining power?
Yeah.
What is your answer to that?
So the first is that the trends underpinning the OFI business
Yes.
are different from the trends underpinning the Olam Agri business
Right.
and the trends underpinning the rest of the Olam Group business. So as far as OFI is concerned, there is a growing demand now for more natural, plant-based, on-trend, sustainable, healthy food ingredients and solutions. That is what our cocoa business, coffee business, edible nuts business, spices business, dairy business is catering to. And as far as Olam Agri is concerned, it is about basic staples.
Yes.
Rice, wheat, basic staples.
Right.
And there is, because of growing population, there's a growing demand for these basic staples. Because of supply constraints in terms of the availability of arable land and the climate change impacts, there's a growing imbalance between the supply and demand of these basic food staples. And food security is a big heightened concern. Most of the demand for this set of products is coming from fast-growing emerging markets in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa. So it's a different set of geographies, a different set of trends, a different set of capabilities that are required to succeed in that business.
Yes.
When you combine everything together and co-mingle all of these businesses together, it becomes a little bit too complex to really take each of these businesses to full potential. The second is the natural shareholders of each of these businesses are different.
Yes.
There are different people who are interested in the first set of trends that underpin the OFI business. There's another group of investors who are interested in the food security aspect and the basic food staple demand, fiber demand business. And there are different people interested in our, for example, our Olam Ventures business, which is about digital and sustainability parts. So by separating this and providing investors the opportunity to invest in each of these businesses, providing these operating entities the ability to develop their own new vision and a new game plan for exploiting these trends and taking their businesses to full potential, and attracting the right kind of investors to each of these entities who will value these businesses and therefore potentially re-rate these businesses is the underlying logic because of which we believe that the cost of separating and doing all of this will be far outweighed by the incremental value that we can create by bringing about this reorganization and the sharper focus and simplicity and catering to different trends of these three entities.
You have given a lawyer's answer.
No, I have to say that first and foremost, I always wear my shareholder hat. As a co-founder and a shareholder of the business, I have not sold a single share so far.
We know you've always been very mindful of shareholders' interests. Yeah. But tell me, you have a strategic sovereign investor.
Yeah.
How are they reacting to this? Because for the comfort of all other investors, is Temasek having, have they come on board?
Yeah, we wouldn't attempt to do this without the support of our major shareholders, because obviously this has to be receiving the approval of our shareholders.
Yes.
But all our existing shareholders, we believe, will support this because they will participate in all the futures of all of these businesses. So nobody has to fear that we are selling off our crown jewel and they're not going to participate. Yes. They will get a share in OFI GL business. They will get a share in the rest of the Olam Group businesses.
One for one.
One for one. So everything that is going to be the future value creation that will come from the OFI business and the OGA business, the existing shareholders will participate. So for all the existing shareholders, we believe that we will receive their wholehearted support, because at the end of the day, we are creating a pathway to maximizing long-term value creation on a sustained basis by doing this reorganization.
So you are saying, stay with us, you're not going to lose anything, you're going to gain, I'm going to give you higher shareholder value. That's what my dream is.
That is our intention. That is our hope,
and you're going to work
and that is our belief.
Yeah. Believe, and you're going to work for it.
And we will execute this well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would expect you to deliver that.
We should be held accountable to deliver this.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Is OFI, as you said, is growing at a very significantly faster pace than the other parts of the group. Is the OFI business capital intensive?
Let me invite Shekhar, who is the CEO of OFI, to respond to that question. Shekhar, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
Yes,
Shekhar, we can hear you.
Thanks, Sunny, and thanks, David, and good evening to you all. I'm sorry I'm not in Singapore right now, so joining you from London. But rest assured, looking after all your interests as we are here in this exciting next phase of Olam's journey and OFI journey. So to answer your question, David, like Sunny mentioned, we see significant growth potential in all of Olam, but there are different growth paths for OFI vis-a-vis Olam Agri. So specific to OFI's growth path, the 5 product platforms that we are bringing together in cocoa, coffee, nuts, spices, and dairy, all of them, as I say these product platforms, you can think bakery, confectionery, beverage, and culinary. So the growth potential of bringing these 5 together is in the capacity of these platforms to combine together to service these common end-use categories with common customers, common capabilities, common channels like private label or food service. And that's where the big growth is.
So is it capital intensive, Shekhar?
Yeah, actually, it's not so much the capital intensity, it's the capability combination. And that's what I would say, that by bringing these products together, they're all well-invested platforms, they're global platforms, but by bringing them together, we create significant synergies across these platforms and bring significant customer alternatives that we can do. And then there are obviously future growth. We can look at very specific organic or inorganic capex that might be required based on the opportunity.
So it's not capital intensive really.
So capital intensive is based on how fast you want to grow.
Oh yes.
We believe there is significant growth potential in the OFI business.
Right.
And therefore we are raising some growth capital through the OFI IPO to accelerate that growth. So part of the capital that we raise will also right-size the balance sheet of OFI, reduce its gearing. But part of the capital that we raise will support the growth opportunities that Shekhar identified. Yeah,
Okay.
because that 5 end-use categories that he talked about,
Yes.
the market value of those end-use categories is $754 billion.
Right.
And it's growing at between 5 and 6%.
Yes.
So there are opportunities that we have
Yes.
to accelerate our growth through this process.
Who are the competitors for or competitors of OFI?
Shekhar?
So, so some of the competitors are in these product platforms participating in different parts of the chain. So there are cocoa-related competitors or coffee-related competitors. But as we go forward, the competitor that is like Barry, Calabar, a large chocolate integrated player, could be a competitor for us in cocoa. But we are kind of a Barry for cocoa, nuts, spices, coffee, dairy. And then we are going forward, looking at competitors like Kerry Ingredients, who are looking at providing these solutions for taste and nutrition, which is what is going to be doing. So the competitive set of OFI will be different from the competitive set of OGA, including both people who are in the specific parts of the individual products, as well as who are participating in the categories that OFI is servicing.
Right. But Shekhar, has OFI already achieved a dominant market position?
Yes, in the product platforms that we participate in, we have a significant leading position, top 2, top 3 across all the platforms. So there is significant size and scale and differentiation across these platforms that OFI has today.
So top 2, top 3 globally in each of those platforms already.
Right. Already.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good news. So I'll come to the IPO. Why choose London Stock Exchange for OFI? Why not Singapore? I'm a Singaporean. I would ask you that first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
why not? I mean, what are you thinking of? Is it valuation, or is it future growth better from?
So I'll ask Shekhar to answer the question,
Yes,
but
yes.
we evaluated many competing alternatives
Sure.
before we arrived at the choice of London.
You're right.
Shekhar, if you can just walk David and the shareholders.
Firstly, the proposed IPO, we are looking at a primary listing in London, but also dual listing in Singapore. So we want to stay available in both exchanges. So the choice of London was primarily because apart from the large investor pool and the higher liquidity in the London Stock Exchange, we believe that the sector that OFI is in is deeply understood, very good research coverage, lots of peers in not only UK but also in Europe. And so the sector is very well understood. OFI has a very strong sustainability and traceability platform. The ingredients are very well understood. So the business is understood, the sector is understood. It's very well covered with research, in addition to having the global network of investors that is there. And we believe that therefore the potential understanding of this business and the hence valuation of this business and opening up new investors for this business, London would be an appropriate venue. But at the same time, we would also want to be sure that all our existing shareholders are well taken care of. And therefore, we want to be sure that they have the option to remain invested, and we hope for a long time in through Singapore. And also the larger Asian investors, the other investors who will also, I hope, will find OFI as a very good investment opportunity. We would like that to offer that alternative. So we are providing both the alternatives which can maximize the value, enhance the investor base, and then position OFI for future growth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not asking you to look at the crystal ball now and say how the IPO will fare, how it would be. It was mentioned that the aggregate dilution is estimated to be about 40% in the circular. So how does it affect an existing shareholder of Olam?
So I think the first thing is the exact dilution numbers, etc. We will only know closer to the time we determine the IPO transaction structure.
Right.
How much will be primary, how much will be secondary. That will be a function of the valuation. That will only be determined after the engagement with potential investors and the road shows and everything else. So at this point in time, it will be early to make a definitive judgment on the structure, valuation, etc. of the IPO. Of course, we want to be in the premium listing category in the UK market.
Right.
And we want to be a FTSE 100 company.
Yes.
And therefore, there has to be a certain minimum dilution and free float, etc., that we have to comply with
Yes.
to get there. Keeping all that in mind, what was illustrated here was more a pro forma.
Yes.
But I don't think we should go by that 40% dilution, etc., at this stage. We expect between the primary and the secondary to have a free float of around 25%. That's what we are expecting. But we can't forecast valuation, etc. now, but we won't go through this exercise unless, of course, we meet our valuation thresholds and there is a real value unlock from this process.
So you did mention that a financial performance is going to be more than positive. You gave me
I'm not forecasting. Our results are out.
you're
Our
not.
results are out on the 28th of this month.
You can't
So
now,
we
but-
need to only wait for another few weeks. We will know
Yes.
the results.
But-
All that I can say, the first half,
Yeah.
our results were very strong.
Yeah.
And we have seen that momentum continue
As
towards the second half.
under the rationale for doing this is shareholder improvement is a new pathway to develop long-term shareholder value.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, therefore your financial position must necessarily be better than what we could now expect.
Yeah. So just to answer that first. So first thing that we're trying to do is to eliminate the value that is already there in our business.
Yes.
Because all these businesses are now together and they are playing to different themes and different sectors, investors don't understand the overall Olam today.
Yes.
Because it is commingled by multiple platforms and businesses.
Yes.
So they're not able to put their hands around this. It's a little bit like a black box for them.
Yes.
And therefore, they find it difficult to model the prospects of this business.
Yes.
We think there's a lot of hidden value in the business.
Yes.
Through this exercise of simplifying and focusing this portfolio into these 3 new operating groups,
Yes.
we believe we'll be able to first eliminate the value that already exists in this business,
Sure.
which is hidden today.
Okay.
Secondly, by raising this capital in these businesses, etc., and the new game plan that we have developed and the new strategy that we have developed, we believe that we will create further additional long-term value on a sustained basis.
Yes.
So it is these two theses
Yes.
that is underpinning this.
Your CFO has been very quiet.
Yes.
Can I ask him to put his hand on his heart and say to the shareholders, hey, look guys, what my boss is saying is absolutely what I think is the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God, that there would be stronger shareholder value. And from your assessment and your digestion of the whole thing and examination and preparation, this is true. The financial position will be much stronger.
So, David, obviously, between Sunny, Shekhar and I, we have been in Olam for several decades. We have
Yes.
literally been building this company, and
Sure.
we have better part of our lives have been, involved in growing this company.
And you have produced results.
And we have consistently grown value and as well as grown the company. Now we are in a very interesting inflection point now in our journey to further eliminate shareholders' value, and we believe that we are doing the right thing. And between what Shekhar and Sunny were talking about in terms of the strategy for the 3 operating groups, the way we are looking at implementing this reorganization plan, definitely this is in the right pathway, and we believe the prospects are quite strong.
Very good. Let's take questions from shareholders. Right, the first one. Pre-submitted question. Please detail the capital structure of Olam and its subsidiaries after this corporate action and in relation to the following. 1, debt, leverage, gearing, and dividend policies.
So I will probably take the first part, the
Yes.
second dividend policy Sunny can take. So currently, if you look at it as Olam Group, we raised rights issue in the middle of last year to support the investment opportunity that we had in the OFI part of the business. And we have been very disciplined in the way we have been managing our overall debt and leverage and gearing position. For long periods of time, we had an unspoken commitment wherein we said that our net debt to equity would be in 2 times to 2:1, right? And as we were implementing the reorganization plan, one of the key requirements is for us to further strengthen the balance sheet of these operating groups. So we believe as we go through an IPO for OFI, as Sunny was talking about earlier, a part of the capital raise will be to right-size the balance sheet, which means that the leverage position and the gearing position will be further strengthened for OFI. And similarly, as Olam Global Agri on a sequential basis raises further capital, a similar exercise will be done to right-size the balance sheet. So overall, we believe that this will be the right thing for us to do, and our debt and leverage and gearing position would be much better than what we are collectively today.
Okay, and the dividend policies.
So there'll be obviously no change in the dividend that we pay. I'm not forecasting the specific dividend for 2021, but in 2021 nothing changes. 2022, once OFI is IPO'd and delisted, the board, IPO'd and demerged, IPO'd and demerged and spun off, the board of OFI will determine what the dividend policy will be, which will be a function of the capital that it raises, its growth opportunities, what the sustainable growth rate, etc. is. For the rest of the Olam group, it will depend on the earnings profile of Olam Agri and the remaining parts of the Olam group and the growth potential and opportunities in that business. So we expect that there will be potentially stronger growth for each of the new operating entities post this restructuring, and that will have some impact on gearing. But what is very important is for the current shareholders to see that they will be getting a dividend now from OFI, they'll get a dividend from Olam Agri or Olam Group. So there will be both sets of dividends that will flow to them, and hopefully that should be attractive enough.
That should be attractive enough. Those are the profound words.
Yeah, but it is a trade-off between growth and dividends.
Yes, growth.
So if the dividends are lower, the growth is going to be higher.
Yes.
If the growth is lower, the dividends will be higher.
I mean, there's also a number of retirees who depend on the earnings and your dividends. So it was mentioned previously about a possible IPO of OGA as part of Olam's wider reorganization plan. Is a possible IPO of OGA still on the cards, or has it been ditched in favor of this exercise?
Yeah, so we are first exploring the possibility of bringing in a strategic minority investor or investors into the OGA register to support OGA's growth.
Yes.
So we have started a limited bidding process, as we have explained briefly in the scheme documents. If we succeed in that effort, that will be one way of raising capital in OGA to support OGA's growth, to eliminate and unlock value in the OGA business, provide a benchmark valuation then for potential IPO down the road.
Yes.
Because we were envisaging a potential IPO of OGA sequentially after we have completed OFI, some time gap between the two before we do that. But if you do the private placement and do a secondary sale of shares in OGA by bringing in a strategic minority or minorities, that will then be the first step. And then the second step after that will be a potential IPO and demerger of Olam Agri down the road.
Okay. Okay. Whoever asked the question, you can be optimistic. Next question, please. It was mentioned previously about a possible IPO of OGA. This is what we just
went
Next
through.
question. Yeah. Whilst we are waiting for the next question, going forward, other than the long-term service agreement between OFI and the technology and business services arm, it is expected that OFI will operate independently from Olam Group.
Yes.
Right? So there will be there will not be significant recurring transactions between OFI and Olam Group. Is that right?
That's correct, because all the functions and
Yeah.
country management structures are now fully embedded
Yes.
separately into OFI, separately into OGA,
Yes.
and separately into the rest of the Olam Group. So each of these three entities are now standalone
Yes.
with their own embedded structures. The only function, we have 14 functions in the company, like risk and finance and accounts and sustainability,
Yes.
etc.
Yes.
The only function out of the 14 which will be provided on a centralized basis is IT and IT related services. So that is the LSTA that you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
long-term
Long-term,
LTSA,
LTSA.
long-term service agreement,
Yes.
where we are taking our IT and IT-related function and separating it as an independent entity to provide arm's length IT and IT-related support services
Yes.
to all the three entities, to OFI, to OGA, as well as the remaining Olam group.
Yeah.
Because we think that we have a very, very good IT and IT-related services team.
Sure.
And we don't want any of the operating entities to have problems with developing new systems, etc., as they try to pivot their strategy. There's a lot of work that they need to do.
Sure.
So they should be assured that everything will operate very smoothly.
Yes.
And we will then allow the Olam Technology and Business Service Solutions, which is this IT and IT-related operation, to develop third-party businesses down the road. So in addition to providing that support to OFI and OGA and OG, they will also provide this to other third-party clients.
Okay. So the shareholders stay put. They don't lose anything. If at all, they should dream of something better. What about the management? I mean, in terms of operational and other areas, are the management, any changes will occur, or will they stay put?
No, the management will now be embedded into these entities.
Different entities,
Yes. So for example, if you had a sustainability function,
yes.
it was a central function servicing the whole of Olam.
Correct.
Now we have a sustainability function in OFI,
Yes.
another one in OGA, and rest of Olam.
Yes.
So all of these people are now embedded.
Yes.
So there's no real retrenchment.
No, but
Because
maybe you may need more people.
We have needed more people. The cost of those dyssynergies as a result of
Yes.
embedding these structures within these independent new operating groups, we believe will be more than made up by the value uplift we hope to create
Would there
by
be
this
a
exercise.
Big increase in management costs? Or would
There
that
will be some
marginal?
increase. There will be some increase, but it is if you benchmark
Manageable?
it, if you
Manageable.
benchmark it for
Yes.
this size of transaction, it is very reasonable.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, so Raphael Fu wants to know what is the target valuation of their OFI IPO, and how much do you intend to raise for the IPO?
So Rafael, we unfortunately won't be able to give you an
Forecast.
explicit answer on this today, as we have to continue our investor engagement. All that we can say is we have appointed the joint global coordinators for the IPO of OFI, and they are some of the world's leading investment banks. So we have appointed JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, HSBC and Citibank as our joint global coordinators. Rothschilds has been appointed as an independent financial advisor. We have appointed 4 joint book runners, JBRs. They're all working very hard at making this a very successful IPO. We are engaging with investors to educate the investors on the equity story and the distinct positioning of OFI. So we will see what the market conditions, etc., are in Q2 when we are planning to do the IPO of OFI, and that will then determine the transaction structure, the size of the IPO, the valuation, how much is primary, how much is secondary. But it is not going to be possible for us today to give you a number on either the size of the IPO or the potential dilution at this point in time.
Okay. Did the board consider spinning off Narayan's parts of the company separately, example coffee, cocoa, etc.?
Yes, it was definitely one of the potential pathways that we explored. We explored many pathways. But as Shekhar articulated, and as I mentioned about the Olam Agri business, we tried to look at a portfolio with common themes, exploiting the key consumer or agri-business trends that are underpinning those sectors. So we wanted something that had underlying logic that held this together. They could hang together as a coherent equity story and equity position. So we believe that this combination of 5 platforms in OFI, with, as Shekhar said, common end-use categories, common customers, common channels, common capabilities as a value-added ingredient company and value-added ingredient solutions company would serve us better from a value maximization standpoint, from a diversification standpoint, and from a focus and simplicity standpoint, plus the kind of investors who are invested in this theme. So we believe that there are investors who are very keen on this growing demand for natural, plant-based, on-trend, sustainable, healthy food ingredients and raw materials. And that is why we have not gone and done pure play cocoa separately and coffee separately, because there are a lot of commonalities and cost sharing and capability sharing and channel sharing between these group of businesses that constitute OFI and the group of businesses that constitute Olam Agri and the rest of the Olam group.
So what can derail the IPO?
Well, market conditions are beyond us. If there is a major market disruption, huge volatility in the stock markets, we will only go ahead if all our thesis on value creation and this being in the long-term interest of the Olam shareholders is met. So we cannot predict markets and market conditions at this point in time. We can control all that we can control in terms of having a very distinct equity proposition and equity story, a very granular game plan for profitable growth and value creation, putting together all the capabilities that we need to succeed, planning very, very well, getting the right set of advisors on board. And we have done all of that. And we are executing strongly on this plan. But if there are very, very adverse market developments and market conditions, etc., even if we have secured all the shareholder approvals on the 18th, we will not pull the trigger unless all the other conditions are met. And we believe that by going forward with this, we will actually unlock value for our shareholders in the long term.
You're a religious man.
Very much so. Spiritual.
What does the God say to you?
Yeah.
So you're going to pray harder. Or
Yeah.
do you believe in astrology?
No, I'm spiritual, and I believe that this is the right thing to do for the long-term interest of the company and the shareholders.
Very good. What will be the revenue generators for the new listed Olam Group in Singapore? How consistent will the revenue generators be? You partially covered that.
So the rest of the Olam Group includes Olam Agri, which is a principal subsidiary, which I described, and it has got significant growth prospects. And then it has got three other elements, which is the remaining part of the Olam Group. One is our gestating businesses, which we are nurturing and developing to full potential. We will partially and fully monetize those assets and those businesses over time. Then there is a set of deprioritized assets. As you know, when we announced the 2019 to 24 strategic plan, we said we'll get out of 4 platforms. We will cull 17 SBUs, and we will divest about 28 related assets. Out of the 28 related assets, we have now got 7 assets left. So we will be selling that over time and releasing cash from that.
Okay.
And then the third element is the Olam Ventures business, which is all our Engine 2 businesses, startup ventures based on digital and sustainability as the twin engines and pillars. So we are developing 5 such new ventures. So that will be part of the remaining Olam Group. And then Olam Technology and Business Service Solutions, that is providing the IT and IT related support services and shared services to the different operating groups and entities, will also be part of the Olam Group. So the prospects of the remaining Olam Group after OFI is spun off and demerged is still very bright. And the existing shareholder will participate in both.
Both. You're catapulting into a very big global player now.
Yeah, so
Much bigger than what you are right now. Here.
yeah, so in 2020, as you know, we had revenues of $35.8 billion, nearly 36 billion Singapore dollars. We operated in more than 60 countries. We had about 82,000 employees. In the first half of this year, we already grown top line by 33%. We hope that the full year results will be strong. And it is already a very substantial business. So OFI itself in 2020 is almost a $10 billion business. OGA in 2020 was a $16 billion business.
US dollar numbers.
These are all US dollar numbers. Sorry, the earlier number I gave was Sing dollar.
Right.
These are all US dollar numbers. So these are all large businesses with global leadership positions, with strong potential to grow. And by now focusing on just this 5 businesses here in OGA and OFI, it gives us a much better chance to focus our strategies, to focus our resources, to build the right organization, to develop an independent vision for these businesses, attract the right kind of talent and capabilities to take these to full potential.
You're in cotton as well? Or have you-
Yes, that is part of the Olam Agri
Olam
business.
Agri, yes.
Because these are the essentials. Olam Agri is about all living essentials.
Yes.
Food, feed, fiber, clothing,
Right.
and shelter, wood, right? These are all the living, every day we need this. And as the population grows, per capita income grows, economy grows, there's a growing demand for this. And there are big supply side constraints.
Yes.
So secular long term, we see attractive growth prospects in the Olam Agri business, which is part of the remaining Olam group, as well as the OFI business, which we've already explained.
So why Olam chose not to announce the 2021 year-end results before the EGM, and is Olam going to pay dividends before the split?
Of course, the Olam will pay a dividend for 2021,
21.
but our results are going to be announced on the 28th,
Right.
and we don't want to therefore announce it prematurely.
Prematurely.
As you know, ours is a complex operation. We are in more than 60 countries.
Yes.
And we have more than 250 entities. So when you close your books for the full year, it is a complex process. We are not in one country or 2 countries.
Yes.
So it takes us time to complete a full set of accounts for the full year. So by the 28th, we will be announcing the results, and along the results, we will announce the dividends that we are going to be paying as well for the 2021 year.
So Hardeep Singh Gill wants to know, could you please tell the OG and OFI shares offered to existing shareholders will be listed on Singapore Exchange and do not have to deal with London Exchange?
So the OG shares will be listed on the Singapore Exchange.
Yes.
The OFI shares will be listed, as Shekhar explained, both in London and in Singapore.
secondary.
So the Singapore shareholders who want to monetize the OFI shares, they can easily monetize on the Singapore Exchange. They want to participate in the long-term growth of OFI, so they want to buy more OFI shares, they can participate and buy that in Singapore.
Right.
So they will have the full flexibility.
So he can do that.
Yeah.
Jai Khan asks, for IPO and LSE with BOE imposed back-to-back interest rates hikes for the first time since 2004, would it be possible for not able to get good value as expected for the OFI IPO? And what will be the next movement for that?
So interest rates and cost of funds has an impact on valuation because obviously the way the market values companies is to look at long-term future cash flows, which are discounted to present value at the weighted average cost of capital. So if interest rates goes up, the weighted average cost of capital will go up. But I think the market is already pricing in a certain hike in interest rates. And even with all the hikes that are priced into the long-term yield curve, the absolute interest rates are still very low by historical standards. So even if the Fed hikes it 4 times this year and a couple of times next year, at the end of all of that, we will still be under 2%, which from an historical perspective is very low interest rates if you look at the past. So I don't think it'll have a huge impact, but it is a fact that if interest cost goes up and weighted average cost of capital goes up, it will have some impact on valuation in that regime.
So what is the type of OGA IPO horizon you're looking at? Are we talking about 2 years or longer or shorter?
So that, as I said, depends on whether our private bidding process for attracting strategic minority investors succeed. If it succeeds, then the potential IPO could be a little bit longer because the new investors might not want us to IPO within a very short time of raising capital from these strategic minority investors. We are, however, IPO ready for Olam Agri, and our plan was to originally do an IPO of Olam Agri 1 year after we have done the IPO of OFI. So if you do not find the right kind of strategic minority investors at the right valuation, and we decide to launch the Olam Agri IPO, it will be roughly a year after the OFI IPO is completed. So that is roughly the time frame.
So Sunny, you've taken a lot of questions. You've made you work hard today. Could you round up giving 3 very good reasons, very simply for my constituency,
Yes.
to understand why they should vote in favor? I'm sure they're by now persuaded, but round up for us.
Yes. I think this reorganization exercise will first and foremost unlock the value that is there in the existing Olam business, and also provide us new pathways to further create additional value long term on a more sustained basis. So that is the first and the principal reason. Secondly, each of these new operating groups, by simplifying and focusing the portfolio, has a much better chance of extracting synergies and the full potential value of this business. And as we set in place this new reorganized business from 2020 and 2021, we can already see in our results the value of that simplifying the portfolio and the focus. So we believe that that is the second reason. The third is that each of these new operating groups will be much stronger from a balance sheet and a capital structure standpoint, with significant deleveraging of all the 3 businesses, which will allow us further headroom for profitable growth into the future. And fourthly, you must be clear that you will be participating in all that potential growth in each of these entities. Although we are going to be spinning off and demerging OFI, you will continue to remain a shareholder of OFI if you choose to, and of the rest of the Olam group, where in both areas we believe, in both parts we believe that we'll create value. Our objective is not to maximize value for one entity. You're all shareholders of the entire Olam group and OIL. So our objective through this exercise is to maximize the value of the whole Olam group. There is no point in just maximizing the value of one entity and diminishing the value of the other entities, which will not then meet our objective of unlocking long-term value for all of you as shareholders. So this will help us maximize the long-term value of the whole Olam group, and you will have an opportunity to participate in all of this without paying any additional costs, stamp duties, or any additional payment. You will get all of the upside based on how well we execute this plan.
Thank you very much, Sunny, Muthu, and Shekhar.
Thank you, David.
All the way from London. I wish you success. I'm sure that your shareholders have heard you very well tonight. You've answered all the questions. If they have more questions, they can write in and your team will answer their questions before each year. Right?
Thank you, David. On behalf of my management colleagues and my board, I once again want to thank you and SIAS for
SIAS is always ready to help.
for doing this
Thank you.
in a very constructive way.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Very
Thank
grateful.
you. Thank you.
Thank you all.